For Cain later Imperial Guard, death came not on a glorious battlefield, but in the arms of his sworn enemy. Rebel leader Yahello Riston holds him, demanding to know why he turned his blade at the last moment, calling him an idiot for choosing this path. As Cain's life fades, all he can think is that he should have died without anyone remembering him. Yahello's anguished cries echo around him, screaming his name as the world goes black. Cain awakens in a strange, watery void, a cosmic sea stretching to infinity. He wonders if this is death, a strange sense of freedom washing over him as he walks across the shimmering surface. He muses that Yahello's crying was pathetic, but the man will manage on his own. Just as he prepares to savor this newfound peace, a violent force grabs him, dragging his soul from the abyss. He's pulled into a new reality, his consciousness slamming into an infant's body. He's reborn as Karen, and to his absolute horror, the man holding him is a younger, wrinkled version of Yahello Riston, who proudly calls him his youngest grandson. The shock sends him into a wailing fit. His mind reeling from the impossible truth, he has become Yahello's grandson. 10 years fly by in this new life. A professor lectures a now 10-year-old Karen Riston on the history of the knight Cain later, painting him as a symbol of unwavering loyalty who died 45 years ago. When asked for his opinion, Karen gives a chillingly accurate assessment, suggesting that his grandfather, Duke Yahello, holds a grudge against his dead friend. The professor is stunned as Karen explains that Yahello deliberately gilded Cain's name, unable to accept that Cain chose a quiet death over joining his revolution. The professor freezes, realizing the logic is sound, but agreeing would be blasphemy. Seeing the man's terror, Karen laughs it off as a joke, leaving the tutor completely rattled. His name is now Karen Riston, youngest grandson of the Riston dukedom, and he seethes internally at the irony. That clueless bastard Yahello dared to make him a hero, a fate he never wanted. He finds his new father, Pale, Yahello's youngest son, praying quietly. Pale worries that Karen will inherit his lack of magic. But Karen reassures him with a warmth he never knew in his past life, telling him he's the greatest father in the world. The sentiment moves Pale to tears, who declares Karen is the greatest son to him. Lying in bed that night, Karen recalls a conversation from his past life, where Yahello spoke of a family awakening ceremony and a great secret. Cain had dismissed it, only caring about a quiet life, but Yahello had promised to tell him the secret one day. Now, as Karen, he smirks. His father doesn't have to worry because his magic awakening finished ages ago. His perfect, loving parents are a stark contrast to his inner goal. Yahello made him a great figure in history, so Karen will become the exact opposite. He vows to become the worst trash in the Riston family, making all of Yahello's efforts in vain. As their train approaches the main estate, the Azure Sea Fortress, a dark grin spreads across his face. His precious youngest grandson is coming. Upon arrival, he's greeted by the family's staff, and he immediately senses the powerful mana of the Sea Wave Knights, realizing they've already detected his own awakened power. He's left in a massive reception room when he's interrupted by a bratty, red-haired boy. The boy, his cousin Leo, mocks him, saying that since he's his uncle's kid, he'll never awaken magic and should just become a bookworm to make money like a commoner. Karen's expression darkens, a murderous aura leaking from him as he realizes there's another mad dog in the house. Leo is terrified as Karen unleashes a torrent of magical power, questioning how and when he awakened it. Karen grins sadistically, informing his dear brother that there's no need for 2 mad dogs in this house, and he'll be taking that role. It's time for a beating. His uncles, the stoic Tails and the hot-headed Raphael, are discussing Karen's secret awakening when a frantic servant bursts in. They find Leo beaten and unconscious on the couch. Raphael, enraged, grabs Karen, demanding to know what he was thinking. Karen calmly states that Leo insulted his father and asks if Raphael would have simply stood by. The argument escalates until the head butler, Heinrich, intervenes, announcing that the lord of the family, Yahello, will pass judgment himself. Karen is led into Yahello's study, his heart pounding with cold fury. Yahello sits at his desk, his presence immense, and demands to know the reason for the incident. Karen begins to explain that Leo insulted his father, but Raphael interrupts, calling it nonsense. Yahello slams his fist on the desk, silencing his son with a roar. Yahello then turns back to Karen, asking about his magic. Karen cheerfully admits he awakened it 3 years ago but kept it a secret because it was fun. Just then, a bandaged and weeping Leo is brought in. Karen immediately puts on a show, feigning sadness and claiming that even though Leo insulted his father, he has committed a great sin by striking him. Leo tries to protest, but one look from Karen's glowing eyes terrifies him into silence. Under Yahello's stern gaze, Leo admits that what Karen said is true. Yahello postpones their punishment until after the awakening ceremony, dismissing them all. Later, Yahello remarks to his butler that Karen is an interesting boy, having awakened his power alone and subtly questioning the skill of the knights assigned to his father. He is intensely curious to see what the ceremony will reveal. The entire Riston clan gathers in a moonlit forest before a large, rune-inscribed stone. The Stone of Oath. Yahello explains the ritual. A rift will open and Karen must enter the world beyond, obtain the weapon he finds there, and use it to destroy that world. As the rift opens, a swirling vortex of energy. His father Pale grabs his arm in worry. Karen reassures him with a smile, telling him he'll be back. Internally, he grins. Destroying things was always his job. He steps through the portal. He finds himself in the burning throne room from his past life, surrounded by the bodies of his slain comrades. He sees, wondering if this is some trick to make him feel guilty. A disembodied voice tells him to overcome his fear and ascend to the throne. Walking through the carnage, he feels as though he's stepping on the corpses of his friends. On the throne sits not a king but a sword, his old demonic sword Ruin. The voice of the Blue Clan's guardian dragon tells him this is his weapon, already purified by his grandfather, and that only he can awaken it. Karen hesitates, afraid of returning to the mindless killer he was. Then he recalls Yahello's words, overcome your fear. He finally understands. The ceremony isn't just about getting a weapon, it's about confronting the source of his fear. He grabs the hilt without hesitation. A torrent of blue energy, the azure clarity, engulfs him. The dragon's voice explains the sword's true identity. It is not Ruin, but a far older progenitor sword called Guillotine, the execution sword. A blade that devours demons, its power surges through him, amplifying his own mana to incredible levels. The dragon tells him to seek it in the north once he masters his power. Realizing he must destroy this world to escape, Karen grins wickedly and swings the blade with all his might. Outside, the Stone of Oath cracks and shatters into pieces, shocking the entire family. Karen emerges from the collapsing portal holding the magnificent blade, a wild, triumphant look in his eyes as he announces his return. The Stone of Oath lies in pieces, a sacred pact shattered for all to see. An official reels in horror, demanding to know what Karen has done, his voice filled with panic. But young Karen stands resolute, ignoring his frantic father and facing his grandfather, Yahello Riston, with a calm that unnerves the crowd. The family head's eyes are fixed not on the boy, but on the weapon in his hands. He recognizes it instantly, the guillotine, the legendary beheading sword of their ancestor. A relic so mythic it was erased from the family's official history. Its sudden reappearance sends a shockwave through the gathered elders. Yahello's mind races. He wonders if this is a sign that the time of the covenant is finally approaching. He looks at Karen and asks if he's afraid of the sword. With unwavering confidence, the boy says he is not. A response that brings a knowing smile to the old man's face. Yahello begins to tell the story of their ancestors who failed to uphold a covenant with the blue dragon to destroy the demons at the world's end. They left behind the Stone of Oath, a promise to the future, waiting for the one who would finally fulfill their vow. His eyes bore into his grandson as he asks if Karen is the one destined to succeed that covenant. Without waiting for an answer, Yahello Riston raises his voice and declares that Karen, son of Pale, is a rightful member of the Azure Sea Fortress, chosen by the guillotine and worthy to inherit the Spirit Sea style. The declaration stuns the onlookers, especially the other family members who watch with thinly veiled contempt. Karen's father Pale rushes to his side, checking if he's hurt, admitting he's never even heard of that sword and that merely looking at it sends chills down his spine. An uncle places a hand on Pale's shoulder, warning him that while his son is walking a new path, he shouldn't let this unexpected variable sway the matter of succession. As the ceremony concludes and the family departs, two of Karen's uncles exchange a tense glance, one questioning why the other just stood by and watched. They agree to speak privately, but the tension is palpable as one of them mutters that it's impossible for Pale's son to be the chosen one, though they both know now is not the time for infighting. At a bustling train station, Karen prepares to leave for the Azure Sea Fortress. His father worries about him going alone, concerned not about external threats but the internal politics of their family, namely his two ambitious brothers. Karen reassures him, certain they wouldn't dare act rashly with their grandfather present. An attendant named Heinrich arrives with news that Lady Sabina, Karen's aunt and a master swordsman known as the White Wolf, will be overseeing his training. The news relieves Pale, who tells his son to be respectful, as Sabina always doted on him. Heinrich then delivers a message from Yahello himself. A residence has been prepared for Pale at the fortress, an invitation that moves him deeply. After a tearful farewell, Karen boards the train. Arriving at the Grand Fortress City, Heinrich leads him to a special cultivation chamber deep within the Azure Sea forest, mentioning that his brother, young Lord Leo, is also inside. Excited by the prospect of training together, Karen eagerly runs ahead. He feels an immense wave of magic power flowing from behind the chamber doors. A woman's voice calls out, asking why he's hesitating. He enters and is stunned to find not an old woman, but a beautiful, eye-patch-wearing warrior sitting on a throne. This is his aunt, Sabina, and Karen realizes with a jolt that she must have reconstructed her body with magic, a feat only an 8-star knight could achieve. Sabina tells him to sit next to Leo, who looks uncomfortable. Karen tries to break the ice, but Sabina cuts in, amused that he knows her old title, the White Wolf. She then reveals what his grandfather said about him, that he is a child destined to navigate a vast ocean and she is to be his lighthouse. She sees his immense potential, a raw and untamed power like the great sea itself. And a smile touches her lips as she thinks he'll be fun to train. She begins the lesson demonstrating the sea domination technique by unleashing a torrent of azure mana that knocks both boys off their feet. She explains that the technique involves creating oceans of mana within the body, with 8 oceans signifying an 8-star knight, and merging them into one great sea being the path to the 9-star level, a level only his grandfather has ever reached. A fire ignites in Karen's eyes. He silently vows that in this life he will surpass Yahello. As they begin their meditation, Sabina is astounded. The amount of mana pouring from Karen is unheard of for a novice. And he's instinctively carving his own mana passages without any guidance, while Karen feels his body straining to its limits and wisely stops himself. His brother Leo pushes too hard and collapses. As Sabina tends to Leo, she muses that children need an adult to protect them from their own recklessness. But her eyes fall on Karen. She's in awe of his composure and his ability to grasp his own limits. This child, she realizes, might not need a lighthouse after all. She looks at him and makes a promise. For the next 3 years, she will guarantee his safety while he focuses on building his own strength. Time shifts to swordsmanship training, where Karen meets Zira's Winterguard, the stoic commander of the Sea Wolf Knights. Zira's bluntly states he will not use Karen's noble title until the boy has earned the respect of the knights. To Zira's surprise, Karen cheerfully agrees. But beneath that easygoing smile lies a terrifying ambition. Karen internally vows that one day they will all bow their heads before him. The sudden shift in his aura sends a shiver down Zira's spine, making him think a scoundrel even worse than Leo has arrived. 3 years later, Sabina and Zira's report to Yahello. Sabina's assessment is blunt: the boy is a monster. Zira's agrees, stating that Karen's talent in every conceivable aspect surpasses even Hugo of the Tales family, the supposed genius of the Empire. Sabina warns Yahello of the political storm brewing. Karen's talent will inevitably threaten his son's claim to succession. She then brings up the broken stone, but Yahello reveals an ancient prophecy. The one who broke the stone is destined to raise a new one, signifying the covenant is near, placing an impossibly heavy burden on Karen's young shoulders. Meanwhile, Karen's father Pale reads a letter from his son, who humorously asks for more allowance. Pale is proud of how well Karen has adapted, but worries about his safety now that Sabina is scheduled to leave the fortress. His attendant reassures him, revealing that Karen has not only survived but thrived, earning a fearsome nickname from the knights who train him, the young Mad Dog of Azure Sea Fortress. The Mad Dog is in his element, effortlessly defeating a burly knight in a sparring match and scolding him for having balloon muscles. As they talk of an upcoming mission, his brother Leo overhears and pales, terrified at the thought of being deployed with his monstrous cousin. Far away, Pale's concerns are more immediate. He summons Heinrich, revealing a pouch containing a narcotic discovered on a merchant wagon. His face darkens as he gives the order. Heinrich must travel to the Azure Sea Forest and investigate the barony of Bellis. Under the cloak of night, a figure steps off a train, his eyes fixed on the fortress city ahead. The investigation has begun. Under the full moon, within the walls of a grand duchy, a young man named Karen Riston wanders the torchlit streets with a mischievous grin and a stolen bottle of liquor. He chuckles to himself, thinking it's always a thrill to mess with Sir Zira's collection, lamenting that being in a kid's body doesn't mean he's forgotten the taste of a good drink. His quiet escapade is interrupted by two men discussing the Duke's absence, one of whom recognizes him as the young Duke. The man, introducing himself as Baron Rohan Baluz, explains he has an urgent request concerning Chengisyang. Despite his attendant's hesitation, Karen, with a surprising political maturity, decides to hear the Baron out, reasoning that a noble receiving another noble is only proper, even if he is just a child holding a liquor bottle. Inside a study, Baron Baluz lays out his dire situation. A bandit group is plaguing his barony, circulating drugs and kidnapping commoners for the slave trade. His own military is too weak to respond, and his father was grievously injured in a failed attempt to stop them, leaving him bedridden. As the Baron laments his incompetence, Karen slams the bottle down, his eyes glowing with cold fury as he declares that bastards like that deserve to be ripped apart and killed. He correctly deduces the bandits aren't simple thugs but likely deserters from the war in the Southern Kingdom. A plausible theory given the Empire's focus on the South. To lighten the somber mood, Karen offers the Baron a drink, cheekily revealing it's from Sir Zeer's private collection, and pouring him a glass. Just as the Baron takes a sip, the door bursts open and an imposing man, Sir Zeer's himself, storms in, demanding to know why Karen is touching his liquor again. Zeer's quickly takes charge, apologizing for Karen's behavior and reassuring the Baron that Chengi Castle will dispatch troops to help. But Karen interrupts, stating he wants to go himself. Sir Zeer's immediately shuts him down, declaring the mission too dangerous for a child, acknowledging Karen's prodigal talent but insisting real battle is different. Unfazed, Karen smirks, telling Zeer's he's about to make an offer he can't refuse. A short time later, at a train station, Karen's nervous brother Leo is in full armor, muttering that they've been had. Karen, however, is buzzing with excitement for their first mission. Sir Zeer's looks on as the legendary White Empress, Sabina, approaches, realizing she's been assigned as their guardian. The Baron's son expresses concern over sending just 2 boys, but Zeer's reassures him that with Lady Sabina present, nothing will happen to them. However, Sabina shocks everyone by declaring she has no plans to step in unless the boys are on the verge of death. A testament to her bold nature. She tells a nervous Leo to see this as a chance to prove the results of his 3 years of training and become a proud member of the Blue Wolves. Leo's mind drifts back to a painful memory of his mother berating him for being friendly with Karen, reminding him that he's a rival who disgraced their family. Leo, with quiet defiance, told her that Karen is not his rival but his goal, a genius who reached the 4th star at 13 while he only reached the 3rd at 15. Karen's existence, he explained, is the driving force that pushes him forward. Back in the present, Sabina snaps Leo out of his thoughts, reminding him that she trained him herself and knows how hard he's worked. With renewed determination, Leo addresses her as master. As the train approaches their destination, Sabina announces she'll move out first to avoid her presence scaring off the bandits. Then calmly leaps from the moving train, leaving the Baron's son screaming in shock while Karen just laughs at his master's boldness. The boys soon arrive at the Baluz barony and meet the bedridden Baron, who is still coughing weakly. Karen, displaying a surprising humility, assures the Baron they have no intention of failing their mission, and the Baron entrusts the task to them. Led by a guide into the snowy mountains, Leo whispers his doubts about the herbalist guide, but Karen calmly reveals he already knows the man is a traitor. He explains that from his first conversation with the young Baron, he deduced their plan was to use a traitor to lure the bandits out, and that he and Leo are the bait. Just as he finishes explaining, a group of bandits emerges from the trees surrounding them. Their leader praises the guide, Sven, for his good work. One of the bandits notes the boys don't look like they'll come quietly, and Karen's eyes begin to glow with a chilling blue light as he seethes with rage, furious that these vermin dare spread narcotics in his father's domain. The battle is a blur of violence and speed. Karen is a whirlwind of death, his blade flashing as he cuts down bandit after bandit, leaving a trail of blood-splattered snow. Leo watches in awe, realizing his brother is nothing short of a monster. The bandit leader, enraged at being challenged by a brat, roars and channels a dark red energy into his axe. But Karen meets the attack head-on, his glowing blue sword effortlessly shattering the axe and slicing through the leader's body. The surviving bandits, terrified, immediately drop their weapons and surrender. Karen calmly asks for the name of one of the men, Arha, and then requests a rope. To Leo's confusion, Karen has their hands tied and forces the surrendered bandit to carry their weapons. He explains that to be convincing bait, they must look like they were truly captured. As Arha leads them away, Karen interrogates him, confirming they are a group of 130 deserters from the Southern Kingdom, a force that includes a mage. The mention of a mage in such a remote barony piques Karen's suspicion. It doesn't add up. Soon they arrive at a wooden fortress, and Arha bluffs his way past the guards, claiming he's brought back noble hostages. As they are led inside, Karen senses a strange, overwhelming power. Their guide Arha also feels a spooky chill, his own weapon, guillotine, reacting to something unseen. Inside the fort, a horrifying sight greets them, a bloodied crow strung up as a sacrifice. And beyond it, in the center of the courtyard, a massive, pulsating magic circle glows with sinister red energy. Karen's eyes widen in grim realization. This is black magic. Arhin is frozen in terror as a dark, summoning circle erupts from the ground, tendrils of shadow lashing out as a voice cries for him to cut the ropes. Before he can react, a colossal, shadowy creature materializes, stunning him and the two young nobles, Karen and Leo. With cold determination, Karen tells his brother to draw his sword. But it's already too late as skeletal warriors claw their way from the earth, armed and ready for slaughter. The trio is completely surrounded. And from the rooftops, archers take aim as their leader, Michael Knox, mocks the precious little noble brats who walked right into his mountain stronghold. But Karen is unfazed, his mind already calculating their next move. In a shocking turn, he grabs their supposed protector, Arhin, and puts a blade to his throat, taking him hostage. Leo cries out in disbelief, questioning the honor of such a move. A sentiment echoed by the bandit leader who scoffs at their desperation. Michael calls Karen's bluff, sneering that a hostage without value is meaningless and declaring Arhin utterly useless, telling Karen to do as he pleases with the worthless man. The skeletons close in, and Leo warns his brother that they're hopelessly outnumbered. This was the plan all along. A wicked smile plays on Karen's lips as he reveals their only target is the commander. His eyes flare with an impossible blue mana, shocking the bandit leader. Karen declares he'll handle the commander himself and explodes with a brilliant blue aura, leaving Leo to deal with the undead horde. He moves like a blur, deflecting a volley of arrows with casual grace, while Leo struggles to fend off the skeletal soldiers, overwhelmed by their numbers. The commander screams for his archers to fire again, but Karen is already in motion, unleashing his harang sword style to send a devastating wave of energy that obliterates the men on the roof. Standing over the defeated commander, Karen coolly remarks that he should have attacked faster if he wanted to live. Michael demands to know why the Azure Sea Fortress is meddling in other territories, and Karen reveals this land just so happens to be next to his father's. As Leo finishes off the last of the skeletons, Karen asks for the commander's name. Michael introduces himself, a moment of defiance before Karen viciously stabs him in the leg. With a sadistic grin, Karen orders the screaming man to have his soldiers disarm, an order Michael quickly obeys. The commander spits that even House Riston will fall when they arrive, but Karen just scoffs, knowing he's counting on the Black Wizards. At that moment, the magic circle dissolves as Leo cleans up the last skeleton, and a massive explosion lights up the horizon. Karen mocks the captured leader, asking if he really thought their family would send only 2 kids. A figure emerges from the smoke, their master, Sabina, dragging the severed head of the Black Wizard. She greets Karen and Leo Riston, then immediately declares the mission a failure for overlooking key evidence before kicking Michael down a flight of stairs. She gives Karen reluctant credit for his reckless charge but deducts points for the hostage stunt. Karen explains he wanted to strike where they were least expected, earning a comment from Leo that he's a lunatic, a title Karen accepts with a smile. Back in the village, the freed prisoners are reunited with their families in a tearful scene. Karen approaches Arhin, the man he held hostage, and cruelly asks if he's feeling guilty, before informing him he's being transported to Azure Sea Fortress with his boss. Arhin is stunned, but the other prisoners plead for his life, recounting his kindness to them in the cells. Arhin, seeing a chance, immediately swears eternal loyalty to Karen. Their conversation is cut short when Leo discovers something in a storehouse, barrels filled with raw, glowing magic stones. A predatory gleam enters Karen's eyes as he realizes the truth. The bandits were here for a secret magic stone mine. Later, the young Baron Bellis welcomes them, but before he can offer a banquet, he admits his territory can't afford the commission fee. This is the opening Karen was waiting for. He reveals the existence of the mine and makes an offer the Baron can't refuse, a joint development project with Azure Sea Fortress providing the capital and security. The Baron, seeing a solution to all his problems, quickly agrees. As they prepare to leave, Sabina reveals the Black Wizard was Delaharda, a Class 2 wanted criminal, and scolds the boys for getting distracted. She declares the mission a failure but praises Leo for his performance, telling him to be more confident. They return to the massive Azure Sea Fortress, where they are greeted by their uncle, Pale. He informs them the Empire's political situation is unstable, and that Karen has been summoned to the capital by the Emperor himself. Pale explains that powerful families are uniting, and their father's influence is being challenged. Sabina notes that Karen's actions have inadvertently created a perfect opportunity for their family to expand its influence under a legitimate pretext. Their reunion is interrupted by Sir Zeras, who demands a full report on their mission. Karen smoothly manipulates Leo into writing the entire thing himself to earn favor with their uncle. With his duties passed on, Karen announces he's heading to the Etha training hall, having finally reached the 4th star. Meanwhile, his father, the Lord of the Fortress, examines a piece of monster hide and feels a dark energy he hasn't sensed in years, the black Etha of the long-dead tyrant emperor. He concludes the tyrant either still lives or his will lingers, a threat connected to the Emperor's summons. Deciding he cannot send Karen alone, he resolves to dispatch Leo and the Sea Wave Knights as an escort. But first he needs answers, ordering Zeras to bring Karen to him immediately, wanting to know exactly why his brilliant, terrifying son made such a bold deal in the Baron's lands. All while Karen himself is already deep in training, his body glowing with immense power. A blue aura envelops Karen as he meditates, only for his concentration to be broken by a man questioning his arrival. The man, Zeras, notes that the laboratory is supposed to be off-limits to all but the direct family and Sir Zeras, and he doesn't recall Karen ever entering. Karen calmly asks if the matter is urgent. Zeras smirks, revealing that Karen will soon be heading to the capital. The head of the family has summoned him to a council meeting. Led into the grand office, Lord Karen is announced. Before him sits his grandfather, flanked by other family members, who acknowledges Karen has just completed his first mission. But this is no welcome party. His grandfather's eyes burn with intensity as he immediately chastises Karen for his unauthorized negotiations with the barony of Bellis. He demands to know why Karen acted with such arrogance, a grave discourtesy to another noble house. Karen, realizing this is a scolding, not praise, calmly refutes the accusation. He explains that he merely proposed a deal which the Bellis baronet accepted willingly. When his grandfather scoffs and asks what could be more important than courtesy, Karen's gaze hardens. He declares that the honor of the family is paramount. This bold statement shocks the room. Karen elaborates that the baronet showed excellent tact by putting the family's benefit before his own ego. A flicker of approval crosses his grandfather's face. Convinced, the head of the family declares the deal a great benefit and assigns Pale to handle the remaining negotiations. But the meeting isn't over. He unrolls a scroll, revealing a letter from the Emperor himself. His Majesty has summoned Karen, meaning word of his deeds has already reached the capital. Karen inwardly notes that the current Emperor is a mere puppet. This summons must be the work of the powerful noble factions and their vast intelligence network. Seeing the weight of the situation, his grandfather offers him a choice, saying he doesn't have to go. He explains that the noble houses will want to confirm who Karen truly is, making the capital a dangerous place. But Karen's resolve is unshaken. He declares that of course he'll go, eager for the chance to see his maternal grandfather again. He asks if his brother Leo will also go, and is told that both Leo and Han's squad will serve as his escort. His grandfather cuts through his surprise, stating bluntly that the escort isn't for his protection, but to prevent him from causing trouble. With that, Karen is dismissed, ordered to depart in 3 days. A flashback reveals the negotiation where Pale questions the Bellis baronet's son about the deal's strange terms, giving 5% of their 20% mine share to Karen and Leo. The son explains it's an investment to win the favor of the 2 young wolves who will one day lead the Azure Sea Fortress. Pale remarks on the shamelessness of the move, but ultimately accepts the deal. Later, standing on a bridge, Decuse asks Karen how they'll split the share. Karen smirks, declaring he'll take 9 and Decuse gets 1. He grabs the terrified Decuse, menacingly reminding him what happens if he changes his mind. A scene that makes Pale chuckle about how the inseparable pair used to bicker constantly. That night, DQ's frets about the trip to the capital, only for their master to suddenly appear perched on the windows. She's there to celebrate their first mission, pouring them wine into water cups since they're in a 13-year-old's room. She teases Karen for making Leo an accomplice in his wine-drinking habits. Toasting their growth, she praises them both, before warning DQ's that if he attends parties, he should go without Karen, whose looks and talent would steal all the female attention. Elsewhere, the family head summons Pale, entrusting him with all matters concerning the now-allied Bellis family. He then confides in his son, admitting the Emperor fears him and that Karen's summons is likely politically motivated by other factions. Pale asks why he didn't refuse the request. The grandfather's expression turns deadly serious. He wants to know the true measure of Karen. Since the boy was chosen by the ancestral sword guillotine, he is destined to lead and must be tested against countless threats. When asked if he is worried, Pale downs a drink and firmly states that he trusts his son, an answer that pleases the old man greatly. The next morning, their master bids Zira's farewell, choosing to leave quietly without seeing the boys off. As she rides away, promising to have good wine waiting for their reunion, Karen watches from his window. Reading the letter she left, he sighs, knowing that with her gone, his uncles will surely begin to make their moves. As if on cue, his uncle Tails appears. Tails delivers a chilling warning, telling Karen not to behave recklessly in the capital and threatening to punish him harshly if he brings shame upon the family. Once his uncle is gone, Karen's polite facade drops into a venomous sneer, vowing to make that arrogant man's face twist in pain. At the train station, preparations are complete. Hans approaches Karen, thanking him for the second chance, only for Karen to jest that he's being taken to the capital's prison. Their departure is interrupted by Karen's father, Pale, who rushes onto the platform just to see his son off. He tells Karen that his maternal grandfather awaits his arrival and pulls him into a brief, heartfelt embrace, pleading for him to return safely and not cause too much trouble. Aboard the speeding train, Hans explains they will pass through the Thebe Autonomous Territory, a wealthy region where money equals class. As Karen considers sneaking away for a visit, his ancestral sword, guillotine, suddenly begins to react. A hum of energy radiates from the blade, a clear sign of impending danger. Dismissing the idea of a traitor in their midst, Karen realizes the threat must be external. He snaps at Hans to immediately contact the Thebe territory and alert the entire entourage to prepare for an attack. Outside, cloaked assassins watch the approaching train, their trap of explosive barrels already wired to the tracks. With a signal, the fuse is lit, and the peaceful landscape is torn apart by a colossal explosion. In the Thebe Autonomous Territory, the political air is thick with accusations of money laundering and corruption, causing Mayor Grain to deeply regret ever accepting the position. The bitter clash between commoner merchants and nobles fills the council room with tension. But their squabbling is cut short when an aide bursts in with urgent news. The mayor listens intently as the aide whispers the report. Dismissing the man, he calmly lights a cigarette, waving off the tax investigation as yesterday's news. The council members are baffled until he drops the bombshell. 5 minutes ago, the capital-bound train from the Riston ducal house exploded. With a chilling finality, he extinguishes his cigarette in his drink, stating that since Grand Duke Riston's grandchildren were on board, they are all as good as dead. Amidst the wreckage of that very train, Karen Riston awakens with a groan, his body aching but his mind sharp. His knight Hans rushes to his side, but Karen dismisses his injuries as mere scratches and demands a situation report. The news is grim, multiple casualties, and they are stranded 10 kilometers from Thebe. Hans plans to hold off any attackers while the young masters flee. But Karen senses flare as his sword, the guillotine, begins to react. The attackers are already here. Karen calmly explains that running is futile against scum who would commit treason by destroying the Emperor's railway. With his injured brother struggling to stand, Karen knows there is only one choice. An assassin lunges from the shadows, but Karen effortlessly parries and strikes the man down. A cruel smile plays on his lips as he looks at the encroaching horde, declaring it's time to kill them all. The assassins, led by a hooded figure, are more numerous than expected. The knights form a protective circle as Squad 2 disembarks to join the fray. Their opponents are all at least 3-star level, and their leader radiates the power of a 6-star knight. The leader's magically altered voice echoes, offering to spare the knights if Karen surrenders. Karen smirks, seeing right through the ploy. Their goal is to capture him alive. Realizing they can't kill him, he sees his opening and charges forward with a manic laugh, declaring he can kill them, and that's all that matters. The battlefield erupts in chaos as the knights clash with the assassins. Karen moves like a whirlwind of death, cutting down his foes with vicious precision, his eyes glowing with bloodlust. The assassins hesitate, realizing this is no ordinary child. Their leader decides to handle the boy himself. But Hans, whose real name is Herring, steps in to intercept him, warning his young master to stay back. The hooded man mocks the knight's foolish bravery. As their blades clash with incredible force, Hans is pushed back, his eyes widening in shock as he recognizes the unique fighting style. He realizes with horror that his opponent is Shin Hakami, a 6-star knight of the Pajar Sultanate, turning this assassination into an international incident. Shin taunts Hans, claiming his formation is broken and resistance is meaningless. Hans offers a deal: if they surrender, their lives on foreign soil will be spared. Shin rejects the offer, his eyes glowing with terrifying power as he decides to fulfill his mission, even if it costs him his life. He unleashes a suicidal mana backlash, intending to take everyone with him. Hans prepares to sacrifice himself to protect the young masters, but is stopped by a cold voice. Karen expresses his disappointment in Hans for trying to steal his thunder. And with a surge of brilliant blue energy, he steps forward to meet Shin's attack head-on. With a mocking grin, Karen asks if Shin is already giving up. He declares his name, Karen Riston, with absolute authority. In a flash of blue light, severs the assassin's arm. Shin collapses, calling Karen a monster, a title Karen accepts as praise. But the danger isn't over. The guillotine trembles, sensing a lingering threat. With his final breath, Shin apologizes and unleashes his self-destruction spell, not at Karen, but at his defenseless brother, Leo. Hans screams and dives in front of Karen, shielding him with his body as a massive explosion tears through the battlefield. The world erupts in fire and shrapnel. As the dust settles, a voice echoes in Karen's mind, the guillotine itself, chiding its foolish master but admitting it used its power to save him. Karen gets to his feet and brutally kicks his fallen knight, demanding to know how long he plans to lie there. Hans, incensed that he gets kicked after saving the boy's life, is stunned when Karen coldly asks if he ever requested his help. The guillotine speaks again, revealing it as an ego sword, and begins to bicker with Hans, threatening to cut his head off. Their argument is interrupted by the arrival of the Thebes Vigilante Corps, led by Captain Hyrie. After introductions are made, Karen and his surviving retinue are escorted to Thebes. Inside the carriage, Karen dismisses Hans's concerns, his mind already piecing together the political puzzle. He knows the attacker was Shin Hakami of the Pajar Sultanate, and he ponders if the non-aggression pact is about to crumble. Meanwhile, his brother Leo trembles, horrified after taking his first life. Karen looks at him without a shred of sympathy, telling him he must overcome it because that is what it means to live. Upon arriving at the territory, they are greeted by a profusely apologetic Mayor Green. Karen, however, is in no mood for pleasantries. Over wine, he masterfully corners the mayor, pointing out that the explosives used in the attack must have been smuggled in from the Pajar Sultanate, placing Grain in a very difficult position. The mayor realizes he's being trapped, forced to cooperate with the ruthless House Riston or face ruin. He tries to deflect by asking about Karen's father, but is interrupted again by a panicked aide. The news is dire. The commissioner of the National Tax Service himself, a man known as the Demon King, is heading their way. The mayor pales, but Karen merely smiles, revealing he already knew. His grandfather, after all, truly adores him and will spare no effort to save his beloved grandson. Under the full moon, the city of Thebes bustles with an uneasy energy as a formidable force marches through its streets. From the shadows, two cloaked figures watch, one remarking that the leader must have come so quickly because his grandson is involved. Elsewhere, in a lavishly decorated room, the local merchant guilds are in an uproar. They curse the sudden, unannounced tax audit, furious at the puppet mayor for not warning them about the arrival of Special Division 1. As their panic mounts, the doors swing open and a new voice cuts through the chaos. A blonde youth, Karen Riston, coolly informs them of the true gravity of the situation. The Emperor's railroad has been destroyed and nobles from the Azure Sea fortress attacked. The weapon, he reveals, was explosives smuggled through the merchant guilds of Thebes' Dominion, a revelation that sends a shockwave of fear through the room. When Viscount Humir tries to protest the lack of preparation time, Karen's companion casually threatens to pass his name along to the Commissioner of the National Tax Service, his own maternal grandfather. The Viscount pales, immediately retracting his complaint as the main doors are thrown open. An imposing old man enters, the commissioner himself. He declares with thunderous authority that a full investigation into illicit wealth and smuggling will commence immediately, an order directly from His Majesty the Emperor. Karen watches with a cold smile, thinking that his grandfather is far more of a soldier than a civil servant. Later that night, the commissioner's harsh demeanor melts away as he greets Karen warmly, glad to see his grandson after 3 long years. He asks if Karen is all right, but the boy quickly turns the conversation to the attack. Karen is certain his uncles weren't involved, they are far too clean. This attack was intentionally sloppy, designed to point the finger at the favored sultanate. His grandfather asks if Karen intends to hunt the culprits himself, but advises against it, reminding him of the dangers of the world and telling him to leave it to the adults. Karen agrees with a placid smile, but his grandfather sees the lie in his eyes, knowing his grandson has no intention of obeying. A moment later, alone, Karen's expression twists into a chilling smirk, his eyes glowing with ruthless determination. Across the city, a man named Oyun frantically sends his family away in a carriage, promising to follow soon. He remains behind, fully aware that he is being watched. On a nearby rooftop, a spy confirms the tale is in place. In his room, Karen meticulously polishes his sword, his focus absolute. Sir Zirez enters, reminding Karen that the commissioner has forbidden him from going out. Karen glares back, asking if Zirez intends to stop him. But Zirez is not there to hinder him, he is there to deliver the head of house's true orders. In a projected message, Karen's grandfather commands him to find the culprits and make them pay in blood, to show them the unyielding law of the Azure Sea Fortress. A wicked, predatory grin spreads across Karen's face as he accepts the command, his resolve now unleashed. Disguised, Karen and his companion Arhan navigate the seedy eastern part of Thebes. Arhan complains about their dangerous plan and his demeaning role as a servant, but Karen silences him as they near their destination. A hooded informant named Giulio, sent by Zirez, greets them and leads them to a soundproofed room. Giulio explains he is repaying a debt to Zirez before getting straight to business. He has intelligence that the culprits plan to attack the Rastan family again. He identifies 2 potential suspects from the black market, Kerua and Caligo. Caligo, a mercenary group of ex-slaves, is the most suspicious, as their members left the city at the exact time of the first attack. With no time to waste, Karen makes his choice with chilling certainty. They will hunt Caligo because the desperate are always the most reckless. Meanwhile, the commissioner sips wine with Mayor Grain, revealing that Karen would have pursued this path with or without permission. He dismisses concerns about his grandson's age, calling him a genius perfectly suited for the dangers of Thebes. However, his calm shatters when he learns that Sir Mason, an 8-star knight, is in the city, meaning the Emperor's chaotic 6th prince Yahello is also present. He worries deeply about his trouble-seeking grandson crossing paths with the unpredictable prince. Karen's party arrives at Caligo's hidden entrance but is blocked by guards. They claim the chairman is accepting no clients. Karen draws his sword, challenging them to try and stop him. As Arhan panics, Karen coolly instructs him to enact the second plan, a plan that doesn't exist. Before a fight can break out, a voice emanates from Karen's sword itself, declaring it will reject the blood of these thugs on his behalf. The magic sword moves on its own, disarming the guards in a flash of light and steel. Karen smirks, announcing the start of a hostage situation. Their standoff is interrupted by the arrival of the president of Caligo, who asks him to stop roughing up her men. Though she invites him inside, Karen refuses to trust her and keeps one of her subordinates, Cal, at sword point. As they are led into the lavish interior, they are met by a man in a golden mask. The man greets Karen by name, and Karen feels the terrifying aura of an 8-star master from the man's bodyguard. The masked man claims to be the president's brother, but Karen doesn't hesitate for a second, instantly using his sea wolf technique to take the newcomer hostage instead. To Karen's shock, the man laughs, thrilled by the situation. It dawns on Karen with dawning horror, golden eyes, an 8-star knight as a guard. He is holding the 6th prince. The president, an elf with immense power, returns to the hostage swap. She calmly denies any involvement in the attack, claiming she would never be so careless as to leave evidence behind. A torrent of magical energy erupts from her, revealing her as a 7th circle mage. With overwhelming power radiating around her, she asks Karen if he is in the mood to talk now. In a dimly lit room, masks of gold and silver rest on a table, symbols of the clandestine meeting taking place. Poina, the president of Caligo, pours tea and flatly denies her guild supplied the explosives for the attack on the Riston estate, claiming they only handle them for Leo's experiments. As her brother, the boisterous Prince Levelio, gets uncomfortably close to Karen, he dismisses the idea of the cowardly Karua merchants being responsible and casually asks to be called Leo. Karen sips his tea, internally seething at the forced familiarity. After a brief admonishment from Mason, Poina formally introduces herself and gets to the point. She knows who the culprit is but has one condition for sharing the information. Karen, unsurprised, tells her to name her price. Poina's condition is simple and utterly infuriating. She wants Karen to become friends with Leo. Karen is visibly annoyed, questioning the wisdom of getting entangled with the imperial family, but Leo argues that an alliance would be advantageous. He explains with a sly grin that with the Riston family making its move soon, their friendship would put the imperial family and central nobles on high alert. The real reason, however, is far more chaotic. Leo declares his dream is to be a first-class disappointment to his father, the emperor. Karen can only conclude that the prince is a certified madman. Poina quickly moves on, explaining that the imperial guards have a different objective and are actively investigating the attack. She suggests they might even be colluding with the culprit, depending on who it is. With a flourish, she produces a document containing everything they need to know, asking if Karen will accept her proposal. Meanwhile, in a mansion under the cloak of night, the true culprits, the Oyun merchants, are frantically packing their belongings. Their leader recalls being promised a noble title for his work, assured that the Imperial Guard would eliminate all evidence. His dream is cut short when a servant bursts in, announcing that knights are storming the building. The merchants hope that it's the Imperial Guard is shattered when Karen steps into the room, sword in hand. He introduces himself as the good-for-nothing noble they tried to get rid of, before coldly noting that the merchant seems to care a lot about his own family for a man who tried to kill another's. At his signal, Sir brings in a heavy, blood-soaked sack. The merchant's face drains of color as Karen dangles it before him, dropping it to the floor with a sickening thud. The man collapses in despair, wailing for his family. But Karen grabs him, forcing him to look closer. He points out that the calloused hands in the bag don't belong to his family. They belong to the assassins his business partner sent to silence them. The merchant, overcome with relief, begins to thank Karen, but the young master's eyes turn to ice. He explains that while he saved the man's innocent family, the merchant himself is not innocent and will spend the rest of his life in the underground prison of Azure Sea Fortress, facing endless torture. Back in their meeting place, Leo reflects on the state of the capital, noting the chaos among the nobles due to the emperor's failing health. He recalls his own tragic past, how his mother was assassinated during the palace's internal strife and how he would have died with her if not for Sir Mason. He credits Poina for teaching him magic and now sees Karen as an equally important person for his future. In Thebes, Karen lays out his plan to the mayor, announcing he will publicly reveal all the details of the attack. The mayor panics, worried it will tarnish the Riston family's prestige, but Karen declares this is to ensure the bastards behind it can't cover it up, promising the mayor he will become a righteous leader who stands against injustice. Sir, though bewildered, agrees to follow his master's orders. News of the plan reaches the Grand Duke Yahello, who discusses the bold move with Karen's father, Pale. Pale is shocked, calling it a plan that could shatter the political balance by empowering the mayor over the councilmen. The Grand Duke, however, sees it as a brilliant act of revenge that has increased their family's influence. When Pale expresses concern over entrusting a 13-year-old with such responsibility, the Grand Duke reminds him that a wolf must walk a wolf's path, and that it's time for the Riston family to make its move again. As promised, Mayor Grain delivers a fiery speech to the citizens of Thebes, condemning the councilmen who dared to attack the grandsons of the continent's greatest hero. From a balcony, Karen's maternal grandfather observes the scene, remarking that Karen's plan, approved by the patriarch himself, places him firmly in the line of succession, though only time will tell if that's a good thing. Karen worries he has forced his grandfather to break his principles, but the old man places a hand on his shoulder, advising him that sometimes principles must be shattered to do the right thing. Later, Karen explains the political maneuvering to Leo, who calls him a flower grown in a greenhouse. The next evening, Karen and Leo meet with the mayor again, offering him a pouch of gold coins as a small secret from their magic stone mine profits. The mayor is ecstatic, while Leo silently fumes that he never agreed to such a bribe. As they prepare to depart for the capital, Zirez informs them that their escort will be Sir Hugo Riston. Karen's mind races. Hugo is his cousin, a 6-star genius, an entirely new and dangerous variable in his plans. Their departure is interrupted by Leo's bombastic arrival in a steampunk car, shouting for his brothers. He's joined by the Imperial Guard, led by Raya Keimer. Karen immediately questions why the attack on his family was ignored in favor of a destroyed railway. Raya coolly replies that destroying the Emperor's property is treason, a higher priority. Karen backs down for now, but internally vows that if he finds proof the guards are lapdogs for another family, he will crush them himself. On the journey, Leo proves his sharp intellect by perfectly deducing Karen's entire political scheme in Thebes. They receive a call from Poina, who makes her intentions clear. She wants to partner with Karen personally, not the Riston family, calling him a good product worth investing in. Karen finds her and Leo's self-centeredness remarkably similar. As they finally approach the gates of the capital Decuse, Leo bids them farewell and drives off. Ryak also takes his leave, promising they will meet again. Gazing at the distant, shining magic tower, Karen feels the weight of his return, thinking that this is no different from returning to his own grave. Just then, a figure appears behind them without a sound. It is Hugo Riston, the one they call the greatest genius in the Empire, welcoming them to the capital. After a long journey, Karen Riston arrives in the capitals, where he and his brother Leo are greeted by their cousin, Hugo. Hugo extends a hand, feigning a friendly welcome, but Karen immediately feels the subtle probe of mana in his grip. Hugo compliments Karen, remarking that he's just as impressive as the rumors say. But the warm words are a lie. In the next moment, their grandmother rushes out to embrace Karen, overjoyed to see how much he's grown. She fusses over him lovingly, telling them she's prepared a bath so they can rest for the banquet tomorrow. As they head inside, Hugo is left reeling from the handshake. He can't believe his mana was pushed back. He had sent out his own energy to test his younger cousin's strength, only for Karen to meet it with an overwhelming force of his own. It wasn't the calm, sea-like mana of the family. It was a violent, raging storm, and Hugo instantly recognizes Karen as someone he must watch very, very closely. He can't shake the feeling as he stares at his cousin's back, wondering who Karen Riston truly is. Later in his room, Karen collapses onto the bed, letting out a frustrated sigh. He scoffs at Hugo's audacity, calling him an unpredictable guy for sending out mana without warning. Shaking off the annoyance, he decides to unwind, musing that since he's back in his own grave after 50 years, he might as well enjoy some booze he swiped from the prince's carriage. With a wicked grin, he pulls out a bottle. He props his sword against the nightstand and decides to offer it a drink, pouring the alcohol over the gemstone in its hilt. The sword speaks, asking what this stuff is, and Karen explains he just needed someone to talk to. The sword confirms that it knows this place is like a grave to him, shocking Karen, who never told it that. The blade nonchalantly reveals it read his memories, something Karen chalks up to its magical nature. He questions the sword, remembering the blue dragon said it was the one he used in his past life, and asks if it has any memories from back then. The sword furiously denies it, vowing to cut the head off the bastard who turned it into a magical sword 1,000 times. Karen coolly corrects it, stating that one only needs to cut a head off once. Frustrated, the sword tells him he's too weak to go ask the blue dragon himself. Karen takes a swig of his drink and stares out the window, a burning determination in his eyes. He has to find out the reason his second life began, a miracle that must have been orchestrated by some great and powerful force. His profound moment is interrupted by the sword asking for more booze. The next day, Karen, Leo, and Hugo walk through the bustling capital streets. Karen snaps at Leo for looking around like a country bumpkin, telling him to maintain his dignity. He then schools Leo on being respectful to his older brother in public, much to Hugo's visible annoyance. When Hugo asks if he can speak casually to him in private, Karen blatantly ignores him and changes the subject, pointing to their destination. Suddenly, Karen spots a shop and tells his brother he wants to stop by. Hugo is confused. It's a place that makes old-fashioned clothes for the elderly. Karen just slings an arm around Leo, cheekily claiming that trends are cyclical. Inside, the tailor welcomes the young nobles, apologizing that his clothes aren't popular with the younger generation. He asks who the clothes are for, and Karen declares they're for him, triggering a memory of this very tailor, Ruhan, scolding a young Sir Kane for ruining his clothes. Back in the present, Ruhan is measuring Karen when he recognizes the Riston family crest. He mentions that Sir Kane, a friend of the Grand Duke, was a regular customer. Ruhan speaks of Kane as an endlessly warm person, though he admits with a laugh that Kane never knew his name, always calling him Kid. The words resonate deep within Karen, who suddenly understands the feeling of being remembered. He asks the tailor for his name, and the man introduces himself as Ruhan. Just then, a young woman bursts into the shop, shouting that Sir Kane's enemies, the grandsons of Grand Duke Yahello, are in the capital. She spots the three of them, and Karen is left utterly baffled at being called his grandfather's enemy. Leo recognizes her as Amy Altura, the sword prodigy who reached 4-star rank at 17. Hugo apologizes for his cousin's behavior, but Amy ignores him, correctly identifying Karen and Leo. She explains that the escort knights told her about them, and Karen notes that she seems sharp. But when Amy asks why he would call her grandfather Sir Kane's enemy, Karen casually dismisses the hero, saying he was just a guy who sold his soul to a demon. The statement makes her blood boil. Hugo warns Karen to watch his mouth, but it's too late. With fury in her eyes, Amy declares that insulting Sir Kane's honor is unforgivable and challenges Karen to a duel. Karen mocks her, questioning her right to do so and ridiculing the idea of inheriting Kane's will. He dismisses her hero as a prideful fool who sold his soul. As she lunges, Hugo tries to intervene, suggesting they eat first, but Karen unleashes a torrent of immense magic power that floods the room. He gives her a choice: decide on pork, beef, or lamb, or they can step outside and fight right now. The sheer pressure is overwhelming. Amy realizes his power is on a completely different dimension from her own. Ruhan diffuses the tension, suggesting they all eat together, noting that Amy likely hasn't been eating properly while trying to pay off her family's debt. Her stomach rumbles in agreement, and a blushing Amy can only accept. At the restaurant, Amy devours stacks of plates, insisting she'll pay him back next payday. To seal the deal, she extends her hand for a shake. Karen takes it, noticing her rough, calloused hands, proof of relentless effort. He thinks to himself that if it weren't for her old-fashioned personality, she'd be a talent he'd quite like. Just as they shake on it, Hugo excuses himself to follow someone. The meal is interrupted by a pompous nobleman, de Gaulle Cayenne, who sneeringly approaches their table. He places his hands on Amy's shoulders, reminding her that he's her creditor. Karen's eyes gleam. He's found the scoundrel he was looking for. Hugo demands to know who the intruder is, and Cayenne smugly introduces himself. Hugo recognizes the name as a family of loan sharks. But before Cayenne can continue his rant, Karen cuts him off, calling his words bullshit. Enraged, Cayenne demands to know who this brat is, but Karen simply stands up, holding several healing potions. He tells the Viscount's son that he's about to be turned into a new man. With a demonic grin, Karen lunges forward, promising not to kill him as he begins a brutal assault. Later, in a grand office, Commissioner Gale is informed that his grandson, Karen Riston, has been arrested for assaulting de Gaulle Cayenne. The commissioner sighs in exasperation, but his expression shifts to pure shock when he hears the details. Karen beat the man senseless while force-feeding him healing potions to prolong the punishment. The situation looks grim, but his aide reveals a shocking twist. The victim is pleading for leniency, claiming everything was his own fault and begging for Karen's release with tears in his eyes. The news is so absurd that the commissioner bursts into laughter, a dawning realization on his face. He understands now his son-in-law, Grand Duke Yahello, didn't send Karen to the capital by chance. He intentionally unleashed a mad dog upon the city. As Karen leaves the city guard, he cheerfully tells the captain he'll be visiting again. He then casually mentions he'll have to ask his grandfather, both of them, including Commissioner Gale of the National Tax Service, about the investigation, a thinly veiled threat that leaves the captain frozen in terror. Outside, Hugo asks what he did to the captain, and Karen waves it off as a pep talk for justice. Resigned, Hugo simply asks Karen to warn him before causing more trouble, a request Karen agrees to with a smirk, knowing that trying to control him would only lead to bigger problems. Amy suggests they all get tea together, and the group walks off, leaving Hugo to silently wonder what he's supposed to do now that he's caught up with this uncontrollable troublemaker. Karen sits in a cafe, a look of profound annoyance on his face as the owner heaps yet another tray of desserts onto their table, praising him as the great hero who brought divine punishment to the villainous de Gaulle. The rumor mill had twisted everything. He was supposed to be a mad dog, not some shining hero, and the thought is infuriating even as he admits the cookies are delicious. He turns his attention to the apprentice knight, Amy Altura, bluntly asking how she got entangled with the Cayenne bastards. She explains her father's failed business expansion left them in debt, a common plight for provincial nobles struggling in the capital. Amy claims she remains politically neutral out of a knight's pride, believing a true warrior walks the path of the sword, not politics. Karen sees right through the facade. This isn't pride, it's the desperation of someone just trying to survive. He makes a casual offer. He'll pay off her entire debt if she joins him. His companions immediately leap to the wrong conclusion, accusing him of trying to buy her honor just like de Gaulle. Karen slams his fist on the table in a burst of rage, roaring that he was offering her a position in the Sea Wave Knights, nothing more. With a knowing smile, Amy politely refuses, correctly guessing his true intention is to reform the Imperial Guard from within, something she believes the heroic Sir Kane would have done. The naivety of her words makes Karen's stomach turn. She has no idea what kind of man Kane really was. A dark memory surfaces of Kane's men, those stubborn, foolishly loyal bastards, choosing to die with their commander rather than flee a hopeless battle. A decision Kane met with a grim, almost approving smile. Later that evening, Amy decides against their duel for the day, instead proposing a formal exchange match requested through her grandfather. Karen agrees, and as they part ways, she cheekily tells him to beat her in the match if he wants her to treat him as anything other than her junior. Back in his room, Karen reports to a man named Zeras through a glowing orb, getting a lecture for beating up Count Cayenne's son. Karen is unbothered, claiming he and the witness, Sir Hugo, get along just fine. Zeras warns him to behave at the Imperial Palace, a promise Karen makes on his father's honor because, as he slyly admits, he has none of his own. He then reports his spectacular rejection by Amy Altura and requests a meeting with the head of her family. The connection switches to his lord, the Duke, to whom Karen formally requests an exchange match with the Imperial Guard to test their skills. The Duke agrees on one condition: Karen must cause no trouble whatsoever before his audience with the Emperor. Karen accepts the terms, his eyes glinting in the dark as he reflects that this place is his grave anyway. Meanwhile, Zeras informs the Duke that the Imperial Guard accepted the match with pleasure. The Duke isn't worried about Karen, but the situation reminds him of Kane, the man who ignored his desperate pleas and forced his hand. Zeras reveals Karen's interest in Amy is tied to her unusual and obsessive respect for Kane, a figure most of the Guard wants to erase from history. He reminds the Duke that if he hadn't intervened, Kane would have been remembered as the greatest villain of the age. The conversation takes a sharp turn when Zeras mentions Amy's family name was changed from Act 50 years ago, a name that clearly startles the Duke. The next day, Karen and his brother Leo ride through streets filled with cheering crowds, a spectacle Karen dismisses as a political performance orchestrated by the palace to intimidate rival nobles. At the palace gates, they are met by Sir Luke, who asks for their swords. Karen hands his over, but not before cheekily mentioning their grandfather once broke this very rule, causing the guards to stiffen. The guard who takes the blade stumbles, unable to handle the fierce, pulsing energy emanating from the weapon. Karen just grins, advising him to handle it with care. As they walk the glamorous halls, Karen's demeanor shifts, his eyes glowing as his magic flares, sensing something deeply wrong. A terrible vision flashes through his mind, a battlefield of fire and death, a commander falling, and himself standing over a vanquished foe. He shakes it off just as they are announced before the throne room. Inside, they are not greeted by the Emperor, but by the imposing Crown Prince Iorn Carden. Karen freezes, his fist clenching as he recognizes the face of the Demon Emperor from his past, the very devil he swore to destroy. He forces himself to remain calm, recognizing the family resemblance is only natural. When the prince mockingly brings up their friendship with the sixth Prince Levelio, Karen smoothly kneels, twisting the insult into a pledge of allegiance, promising to foster a strong relationship between their houses. The veiled threat hangs in the air until the prince coolly accepts it, dismissing them to await the evening's banquet. In their private quarters, Levelio himself appears, confirming the crown prince's hostility is due to his family backing Levelio's claim. The sixth prince speaks of a dark imperial tradition, a son overthrowing his father, and proposes they use the banquet to make a move. With every noble in the capital attending, he offers to set the stage for Karen to cause chaos. Intrigued, Karen agrees to hear the plan, much to Leo's horror. Later, as the banquet begins, Karen ignores the finery, his mind on his past as a slave who was never welcome in such places. Suddenly, his magic sword buzzes with a warning. Karen's eyes snap open, glowing with a cold blue light as he feels a familiar, sinister presence in the room, the unmistakable aura of black magic. A sinister tendril of black magic snakes through the imperial palace banquet hall, an unwelcome guest among the oblivious nobles. But Karen Riston is not oblivious. His sharp eyes narrow as he senses the dark aura, realizing any practitioner skilled enough to bypass the magic tower's mages is no ordinary foe. As his companion Leo frets over their reception, a man named Karim of the Marquisate of Diaz approaches, introducing himself with a flourish. Karen, however, offers only a cold shoulder, his mind clearly elsewhere, forcing Leo to apologize for his brother's rudeness. Karim tries to smooth things over, thanking the Ristons for dealing with bandits in his territory, but his praise is cut short by the arrival of the smirking sixth prince. The prince immediately throws a verbal jab at Karim, then offers a false apology, blaming his commoner blood for his lack of control. It's then that Karen's focus sharpens, his eyes glowing with power as he pinpoints the source of the black magic. A mysterious woman in an ornate mask. The prince continues his political games, reminding everyone of his family's power, but Karen has reached his limit. He coldly tells the prince to shut his mouth, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, and declares the charade is over. He announces to the stunned room that a rat using black magic is hiding among them, asking the shocked sixth prince to buy him some time. With a wicked grin, Karen recalls his family's purpose. Demons are for House Riston to deal with. He shoves past the nobles, his aura flaring so intensely that Karim freezes, unable to even draw his own blade in the face of such overwhelming pressure. As Karen strides forward, wreathed in blue energy, the sixth prince activates a golden hexagonal barrier, a hallucinatory artifact to protect the guests. Sword drawn and glowing, Karen confronts the masked woman, remarking that while he expected no welcome in the capital, this was more than he bargained for. The woman is amused, admitting she's been found out and praising his bloodline before her eyes glow with demonic power. Her dark magic shatters the prince's barrier. As she purrs that she finds Karen quite pretty, enraged, Karen lunges in a blur of motion, and with a single clean strike, severs her head from her body. But the horror is just beginning. The severed head grins from the floor, its eyes still glowing as it calls him lovely, and the body dissolves into a swarm of black and purple petals. The nobles scream as the petals coalesce, reforming into the creature's true demonic form. She mockingly notes that her regeneration is imperfect because his sword devoured her mana, adding that if he were a little stronger, she'd devour him right now. The demon attacks, her speed inhuman, and she lands a shallow cut across Karen's neck. As Leo tries to rush to his aid, the sixth prince holds him back, insisting this is Karen's fight. The prince warns Leo that he'd only be needlessly killed against such a monster. A voice from Karen's sword agrees, telling its master that this opponent is too much and fighting will only lead to a meaningless death. Karen scoffs at the thought, retorting that a meaningless death in the line of duty doesn't sound so bad, and he can't let a demon go free. The demon, impressed by the sheer hatred in his eyes, attacks again, her magic lashing out and injuring nearby nobles. The sixth prince erects another barrier, yelling for Karen to focus on his fight. Ignoring the demon's taunts, Karen stands his ground, his sword warning him that his next move is too dangerous. He unleashes the Sea Wave Sword's fifth form, Maelstrom, a vortex of violent energy that causes him to cough up blood from the string. He grits his teeth, declaring he doesn't care about the damage to his body as long as he can pierce the demon's heart. Meanwhile, outside the hall, the Imperial Guards find the entrance sealed by a barrier of black magic that even the mages from the tower cannot break. Inside, the demon reveals she won't kill him, as her king forbids it, before lunging once more. Karen braces himself, remembering his training. The power of the sea is not to be controlled, but accepted. He deliberately takes her claw through his shoulder to create an opening, catching her arm as his blade ignites with watery energy. The demon is shocked by his bold sacrifice and finally recognizes his weapon, the predator guillotine. The sword confirms its nature, urging Karen to devour the black magic and make it his own power. As he absorbs her energy, the barrier outside finally shatters. The demon's body begins to fade as she reveals this was just a projection, promising that she and her king will be waiting for him. With a final slash, Karen disperses the last of her magic just as the Imperial Guards storm the room. Sir Luke stands in shock, unable to believe a demon had infiltrated the palace. Weak from blood loss, Karen stumbles, but the sixth prince catches him, offering a vial of the priceless dew of the world tree. After Karen drinks the elixir, the prince tells him to go find his grandfather, then promptly knocks him unconscious with a chop to the neck. Just as he explains the Riston family's protocols, Sir Luke arrives and places the sixth prince under arrest as the primary suspect in the attack. The prince goes willingly, calmly telling a bewildered Leo to make sure Grand Duke Yahello knows he helped. Elsewhere, the formidable Grand Duke Yahello Riston confronts the crown prince, stating his family's vow to eliminate the invaders, but declaring that first he must see his grandsons, his glowing eyes daring the prince to object. A lone figure, Karyua, warns his stoic captain on a rooftop at dusk, reminding him that he's never once defeated the young Grand Duke Yahello. The captain stares into the dying light, dismissing any nervousness and declaring he's been holding back until now. Karyua pleads with him to run, explaining that due to the Emperor's black magic he'll be hunted for the rest of his life, but his skills should be enough to survive. He needs to flee before Yahello's army storms the capital. But Karyua's companion refuses with a defiant smile, declaring he'll die there with his captain. He roars in frustration, asking why his captain would risk his life for a mad emperor when he's never once made a choice for himself. The captain quietly explains that this choice is not for the emperor. After living a life as a slave, he has chosen to end it here on his own terms. Moved by this unshakable resolve, the friend pledges to be his comrade on this final path, tossing him an apple as a last gesture of solidarity. The scene shifts to a grand palace where knights mutter about the unwelcome presence of the Sea Wave Knights. Acknowledging the relationship is uncomfortable for both sides. They are all stuck there until the Grand Duke finishes his investigation, which won't be quick since Sir Karen nearly lost his life. In a lavish room, a bandaged Karen lies in bed, thanking a green-haired woman named Amy for helping both him and his brother, a risky move given the animosity between their families. His brother Leo snaps at the mention of a Sir Kane just as Karen sits up abruptly, demanding to know the whereabouts of Yahello, the man who attacked him. Leo explains that the prince was arrested and their grandfather went to the palace to handle it. Having arrived with the Sea Wave Knights immediately after the attack, Karen then questions Amy's presence and Leo says she helped him get treated quickly. Just then their lord, the family head, enters the room, gesturing for them all to sit. He addresses Karen, noting that his internal oceans have increased to 5. Karen admits he had to force open his pathways and use the imperfect fifth form, Maelstrom, which he'd only learned by watching. His grandfather calls the act foolish and immediately commands Karen to cease all external activities for 4 years to focus solely on training. Karen accepts the command, admitting the incident taught him how much he was lacking. He then reveals the demon that attacked him left a cryptic message, saying it would be waiting for him beyond the North Sea. When he asks what's there, his grandfather coldly states he's not yet worthy of that knowledge. The Lord continues, explaining the sixth prince provided the dew of the world tree for Karen's treatment, a favor they must repay. As such, he announces the prince will now be placed under the surveillance of the Sea Wave Knights for violating their pact. Leo protests that the prince was helping Karen, but his grandfather simply arranges for Karen to train with the Imperial Guard. Once he's gone, Karen smirks, explaining to a confused Leo that this is exactly what Prince Yahello wanted. Their grandfather is protecting him under the guise of surveillance, making their family his official backer. He then asks Amy to guide him to the Imperial Guard headquarters later, leaving Zeras to wonder just what the boy is plotting. Elsewhere, 2 nobles discuss the fallout. Pale slams his fist on a desk, enraged that he almost lost his son Karen a second time. His brother coldly reminds him that it is Karen's rising power he should be concerned about. And after Pale leaves, he muses that Karen has become the most dangerous obstacle to the succession. He contacts an elder through a crystal orb, insisting that they must act for the good of the family, declaring Karen will soon have to choose a side, his or the enemy's. Back in a training room, Karen marvels at the power of the dew of the world tree flowing through him, wondering how Yahello obtained an item only elves can get. His brother Leo finds him and, after some awkward teasing, sincerely pledges to always stand behind him, knowing he can't match Karen's talent but can at least block a knife to his back. At the Imperial Guard's training grounds, Karen, Leo, Zeras, and Amy gather. Amy questions Karen's desire for a duel, but he simply tosses her a wooden sword, challenging her to prove she's worthy of following in Sir Kane's footsteps. Provoked, Amy accepts. The Imperial Guard cadets watch on, viewing the challenge as a blatant provocation. The duel begins. Amy lunges forward with all her might, but Karen effortlessly parries her strike without even a proper stance. Shocking her, she's stunned to see him using the Imperial sword style instead of his family's technique. With a sly grin, Karen declares it's his turn. Moving with blinding speed she cannot block, he strikes her down and tells her to get up, reminding her that real enemies won't wait. She rises and attacks again, but he calls her move too obvious and floors her once more, lecturing her that reckless attacks are suicide. Zeres explains to Leo that Karen is flawlessly mixing two different sword styles, a feat of pure genius. Zeres notes that Karen seems to care for Amy and that she is actually enjoying the brutal lesson, a fierce grin on her face. Finally defeated, Amy makes one last desperate move, trapping Karen's foot with her sword. He smiles impressed as she collapses. Without missing a beat, he turns to the crowd and roars for his next opponent. The man named Luke steps forward, offering himself up, and suggests they use real swords. Leo tries to intervene, but Luke declares that what happens on the training grounds stays on the training grounds, and Zeres reluctantly agrees. Luke vows to teach the young mad dog a lesson. Giving Karen the first move, Karen explodes forward, unleashing a tidal wave of magic power that stuns his opponent. Luke is forced onto the defensive, knowing a single mistake will get him swept away. He spies an opening and lunges, only to see Karen smiling. He'd been lured into a trap. Karen counters with a move from the Imperial sword style, leaving everyone speechless. An observer, Lady Sabina, remarks that even calling the 13-year-old a genius is an insult, as he's fighting on even terms with a future commander of the guard. Luke, impressed, readies himself. Karen promises to give it his all, his killing intent palpable. In response, Luke's sword begins to glow with a menacing red energy as he prepares his ultimate move, Moonlight. The duel rages on, with the seasoned knight Luke begrudgingly admitting that the young Karen is not bad. Luke unleashes the Imperial sword's sixth form, Moonlight, a deadly arc of orange energy that screams through the air. A cold dread washes over Karen. He knows instantly that if he can't dodge the sword energy hidden within the flashy attack, he's finished. He responds with his own technique, a swirling vortex of blue energy that rises to meet the challenge. The two forces collide in a shower of sparks, and in that split second, Karen's eyes widen in realization. Luke's attack was a feint. An observer screams for Karen to dodge, but it's too late. The true attack, a phantom blade of energy, slams into him, leaving a bloody gash across his back. Victorious, Luke grabs the defeated Karen by his shirt, his eyes glowing with an intense light as he demands to know who taught him that specific variation of the moonlight technique. In the aftermath, a humbled Karen kneels before his superior, apologizing for getting too excited during their spar. Luke, clutching a minor wound of his own, dismisses the apology and repeats his question with menacing gravity, who taught him the technique. Karen, ever the strategist, turns the tables, asking Luke what would happen if he could create several fake moons or even give them physical force. The advice is so profound that Luke is left speechless, his mind reeling from the insight. Luke had heard Karen was sponsored by the hostile Marquis Diaz and expected a rotten fellow, but now sees he was wrong. When Karen adds a word of advice about not letting a talented girl named Amy rot, Luke understands he's not just a swordsman but a mentor in the making. A wave of shame crashes over Luke. He feels a complete defeat, not with the sword, but as a person, disgusted with himself for showing killing intent toward such a prodigy. He sincerely thanks Karen for teaching him what he was missing and expresses a desire to cross swords again in the future. However, another knight coldly informs Karen that Luke has been placed on probation for 4 years for causing too much trouble. Luke simply smirks, looking forward to seeing Karen's growth in that time. A challenge Karen accepts with unwavering confidence. Elsewhere in the halls of power, a tense meeting is underway. Grand Duke Yahello learns that a demon used black magic to infiltrate the palace by stealing the identity of a viscount's daughter. An incident that has put everyone on edge. Marquis Diaz is forced to deny any connection to the affair. But the Grand Duke's fury is palpable. He roars that his grandsons Karen and Leo were almost killed twice and that a rat in the palace is trying to destroy the future of his family. He declares he will launch a full-scale investigation and hold the culprit accountable, even if they are of imperial blood, a threat that sends a chill through the crown prince. The Grand Duke's resolve is absolute. He informs the council that 4 squads of his knights will be stationed in the palace and his sons will conduct periodic inspections. A clear power play to assert his family's influence. Later, he privately meets with an old friend, asking for his help in an investigation led by his son Pale. He pleads with a desperation that is not like him, explaining that Karen almost died and he needs Pale to grow strong enough to protect himself. His friend agrees, learning that Karen's 4-year probation is actually a cover for intense training at the Azure Fortress. Meanwhile, Karen visits a tailor and runs into Amy, the very person he spoke of to Luke. She's covered in bandages but insists she's fine after the dog-like beating he gave her. She excitedly announces that she's being formally knighted with Sir Luke as her personal mentor and Grand Duke Yahello as her sponsor, all thanks to Karen's intervention. She thanks him from the bottom of her heart and he tells her to find him at the Azure Fortress when she reaches the 6-star rank, promising to teach her Moonlight the hard way. After she leaves, the tailor Ruhan gives Karen a gift, Sir Kane's brooch left for repairs before he passed. Ruhan felt Kane would have wanted him to have it, a sentiment that touches Karen deeply. Pinning the brooch to his new robes, he asks how it looks, bringing a bittersweet memory to the tailor's mind. Outside, Karen and his companions find themselves surrounded by an eager crowd. The charismatic Prince Levelio appears, draping an arm over Karen and declaring him a celebrity now that the rumor of him beating Sir Luke has spread like wildfire. The prince playfully reminds everyone that he saved Karen and Leo from the demons, acting far more decent than his reputation suggests. He places a hand on Karen's head, telling him he looks forward to seeing him run even more rampant in 4 years. Karen retorts that he hopes the prince becomes the palace's #1 scoundrel, and they shake on it. As the prince departs, Karen watches him go, a smirk playing on his lips as he steels himself for the next chapter, his 4 years of probation.